When I was 9 years old, I had appendicitis. My appendix ruptured, and I was rushed to the hospital and rushed into the emergency room for surgery. And when I came out, I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks. And during that time, people in our church and friends and family would come visit me and brought me cards, and they had all kinds of, money and gifts in there for me, and during that time of my recovery. And so when I came home, I had another month or so that I had to fully recover and fully get strong enough to function. There was a lot of care that my mom and dad had to take care of me when I was home. And in the process of that, as I got strong enough, my mom finally took me one day. She said, "We're going to go to the store and you can buy whatever you want." I think my mom was so grateful that I had lived and survived. I truly was just, gangrene had already set in, and when they rushed me into surgery, they had to clean me out and remove all of that. And so it was truly a life or death situation. And so by the grace of God, I survived. And so my mom said, "I'm going to take you to the store and you can get whatever you want to play with. All this money that you were given, it's yours." So I went into the store, and most little 9-year-old girls would probably have run to the Barbie aisle or whatever to get a toy. And that day when I went into the store, I went straight to the electronics department and I got a cassette recorder. Now, those of you that will remember what those are, some of you are too young to even know what that means, but mine was oblong and it had a section here that you would push a button and that would go up and you'd put the cassette in and push it down. Had this big orange button that you would push with a little button inside of it, and you push the whole thing down to record yourself talking or whatever. I bought myself a cassette recorder and a pack of cassette tapes. And every afternoon, as often as I could anyway, I would sit on the front porch and I would record myself preaching messages. At 9 years old, that's what I did. Now, I'll be honest, at 9 years old, I don't recall feeling this big call to ministry. I don't feel called at 9 years old that one day I'm going to preach, I'm going to do weekly Bible studies, I'm going to travel. I didn't feel that call at 9 for that. What I was doing at 9 years old was imitating my parents. My dad pastored a church. My mom co-pastored with him. My mom also preached in the pulpit. She did a radio show in town where she taught on there. All I saw my parents do for the most part was preach and teach in that capacity. I was just imitating my parents. I've often said, had they come home from church and run everybody down and talked bad about people in the church, I probably would have imitated that as well. So it's important what we do as parents, as aunts, people. I don't have children, but I have young people that I'm around that I can influence. It's important what we do, because my parents, while they were just preaching and teaching, doing what God had called them to do, they were influencing my life to a great deal, to the point that even it probably played into, obviously, the calling that God had for me in my life. But they were influencing me. They have continued to influence me. But how horrible that influence would have been had they been coming home with negative comments and all those sorts of things. It's so important, parents, if you are there and you have children, or you have grandchildren that you tend to, or whatever role, it is so important for you to understand you have a huge influence on your children. Children obviously go through all the phases, right? First, when they're little babies, they're totally dependent. Then they go through a phase where they're totally in love. I remember being totally in love with my dad. I had a crush on him and I was going to marry him one day. I didn't understand what that meant. I was totally in love. And then they're totally independent. A toddler, what do they love to say? No! And look at you, and they're mean, and they're toddlers, and they're totally independent. Then they become totally annoyed with you, because they're high schoolers. They're smarter than you. You get the eye rolls. You get the ugh behind your back. That totally annoyed. Then they grow up a little bit more. They get a job, get some responsibilities, and they're totally humbled, because for the first time in their life, they're beginning to get it and see how their parents were right all along. And then one day they become adults like me, and they wish they had appreciated all that their parents did, and they are totally, totally grateful. Through every one of those phases of children, and there's probably other phases in there that all the parents are going, "Oh, you missed this and you missed that and you missed that." Through all of those phases, parents, you make a great influence on your children. You have a calling from God as a parent to make the proper influence on your children. But your voice in our ears is louder and more important than any other voice. Even when we go through phases that we act like it's not, your voice is the one that we will hear and replay and will make the biggest impact in our life. Ephesians 6:4 says, "Do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and the admonition of the Lord." That's your responsibility, parents. That's your privilege, to bring up those children in the fear and the love and the respect and the reverence of the Lord. It says in Proverbs 29:17, "Correct your son and he will give you rest. Yes, he will give delight to your soul." Correct those babies, correct those children, point them in the direction of faith in Christ, point them in the direction of morals and good standards and respect for people, and they will give delight to your soul. Parents, you have a great responsibility to be an influencer to your children. You leave an influence in your children's lives that is far above anyone else's influence. It's the first influence they face or receive, and it's also the influence that through the days of their life they will lean on, they will recall, they will stand on. And if you develop that relationship like I know I have with my parents, they continue to influence me. When I have a question or a struggle or I need advice or I need prayer, I just need somebody to let me spill all my stuff to, it's my parents that I think about calling, because they still have a godly influence on me. They have been inspired to be an influence, and therefore I am inspired by them to be an influence to others. I think about bosses, managers. You have a great influence on your employees and those who work under you. You set the tone of the office, the morale of the workers, your ability to care for them and care that they succeed more than your own success will influence them to work harder, smarter, and to be committed to the job and to the task at hand. It's not this trick that you play on them to get that out of them, but a genuine motivation on your part to see them succeed. Bosses and managers, you have this great influence. And can I say conversely, employees, you can influence your boss. Let them see your excellent work. Let them see your devotion, putting your all into it. And they might be influenced to promote you or to trust you with more, or give you a raise. Again, you don't do it for those reasons, but that's the outflow of being a person who has a positive influence, a godly influence. Let me stop and make it clear to you. I'm not just talking through this series about us being good people that have a good influence on people. Beep, beep, beep. Nope, I don't care about that. I care about us as believers in Jesus Christ, followers of Jesus Christ. When we label ourselves as Christians who have a relationship with Jesus, we have an obligation, but an honor and a joy and a privilege to influence those around us. And whether you're the boss and the manager, the owner, or whether you're the person who just comes to work every day and punches a time clock, both of those roles can influence the other when we step into those roles full of the Spirit of God and in love with Jesus and sold out to Jesus. There's a verse in Philippians that is really kind of a filter for a lot of this thinking about how we influence others or how we're influenced by others. And it says this in Philippians 2:3, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather in humility value others above yourself." That's a verse we could put on our screensaver on our phones and let it filter how we act to other people. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather, and I would add, do everything, because it opens with do nothing out of this. So do everything in humility, valuing others above yourself. Humility will cause us to be a good godly influence to other people. It makes a difference. If we truly value others, we will want to influence them for Jesus Christ. If I value other people, I want them to know what I know. I want them to experience what I've experienced. I want them to find salvation and find the love of Jesus like I've experienced if I truly value others. If we put others first, we'll set aside our agenda and we'll share a timely word with someone. We'll lend an ear to them when they need it. And in so doing, we can influence them when they see the love of Jesus in our lives. Coming up, I guess now it would have been a couple years ago. I'm trying to get my time straight, but my dad was really sick. And when he was sick, he had gotten terribly ill. He had COVID, and it was very touch and go. It was very, I wasn't home. I wasn't able to be there when he was at his worst place, but I was in touch with family. And of course I was getting reports, and we were praying like crazy, and it was really serious. He was very, very, very sick. As long as I had been alive, I'd never seen my dad that sick. And it really took him down for a while. And we were just believing and praying and interceding on behalf of him for healing and asking God to touch him. And I would get updates from my family, often, of course, but when you're far away, you can never get enough updates. You want to know every second. If he took a breath, hey, call me, he took a breath. Okay. Oh, he inhaled. Okay. Did he exhale? Yes, he exhaled. Okay, quit calling me. There's nothing else to tell you. And I'm sure when you're the ones who are there seeing the day by day, minute by minute, it can be frustrating. But when you're separated and you can't be there, you live on every tiny little itty bitty update. And I remember one day I called my sister to see how things were going. Of course, I had already been updated. This wasn't like they had left me out of the loop, but I called her to see how things were going. I called her to see if anything had changed, knowing, of course, that my sister or my mom would have told me if it had been a drastic change. But I was just so eager for any development, any sign, any news. When I called my sister that day, she was right in the middle, had just pulled into her home, and she was unloading a huge Sam's Run. And this wasn't just a Sam's Run for her own personal home. It was a youth function was coming up that weekend, and she had loaded the car with her personal stuff, plus all the youth stuff, all the food, probably something at church on Sunday. It was a huge, massive load that she was in the middle of unloading. And when I called her, she was in the middle of that. And as I talked to her, I started crying. I was worried about my dad. I was trying to be strong and all the faith to believe that God heals. And I had that faith and I believed that and all of that. But in the emotions, I was crying and I was trying to talk to her. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And I could tell in the sounds and the noise of everything that she was trying to talk to me, probably had the phone this way or maybe had her earbuds in. I don't know. I could hear enough rumbling that I could tell she was really busy. And that I was technically bothering her, and she didn't say that, but I knew that in what she was doing, that she was probably needed to get her stuff done. And I remember I said to her as I'm crying and trying to, she's kind of told me all she can tell me. And I said, well, I'll let you go. I'll let you go. I said, I know you're really busy. And she made the following statement that truly has influenced me in such a way in how I deal with people. She made this statement. She said, I'm fine. You're more important. It was just a statement from her. And in the moment, of course, it made me cry some more, because what it meant was, yes, I'm busy. Yes, my car's full of stuff. Yes, I need, but you know what? You're more important. It doesn't matter that I've got people showing up here in 30 minutes and I got a lot to do. You are more important. So let's talk for a minute. Let me settle your heart and mind on what's going on with Daddy in this case. That statement for me has influenced how I deal with people and how I slow down my life and am able to understand that people are more important than my task, than my stuff, than I need to hurry and leave. I got to get to lunch after church. I'm trying to hurry. So many times I have stopped and just thought about her making that statement to me and the influence that her statement made to me has kind of helped me change how I approach people. Today, I just say to you, let's ask the Lord to help us understand the influence we have in the various roles and things that we do and participate in every day. And ask the Lord to help us be a godly influence in the lives of those who are watching, who are paying attention to what we do. And let's ask the Lord to help us represent Him well. Let's look and say, people are more important. Things in this life are temporary and passing, and they aren't going to be here forever, but people are more important. And the fact that I represent Christ to people is more important. And if it puts me out of my schedule for the day a little bit, oh well. If I had an extra minute to speak life into someone, to share the truth of Jesus with someone, to just love someone, to just stop and listen to someone. I know there's times you're on a tight schedule, you're catching a plane, something that's not going to wait on you and you got to go. I understand that. But you know what? Most of the time, that's not it. Most of the time, when we're pushy and edgy with people, it's because we're just being inconvenienced and we wanted to go and you're irritating me. How about today we stop for a minute and say, you know what, Lord, help me understand that people are more important, whether I'm their boss or they're my boss, whether there's something else going on in life, whatever it may be. Help me, Lord, today to understand. And as parents, I would say, make that a big prayer today, which you probably already have. But Lord, help me to influence my children to serve you, to know you, to love you, and to live for you from this day and every single day of their life.